All right, hello everybody. It is 3 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Today's topic is social skills and autism. We'll be focusing on understanding and fostering social interactions, and we're excited to have you all here with us today. This training is put on by faculty and staff at the University of Nebraska Medical Center, the Munroe-Meyer Institute, and the Autism Care for Toddlers clinics. It's partially supported by a grant from the Nebraska Council on Developmental Disabilities, which is focused on empowering families of children with autism in Nebraska through community training and awareness. I'm Dr. Mary Halber, and our other presenters today include Allie Gorup, a supervisor and case manager at the ACT Clinic, Samantha Powers, a behavior technician and master's student at the Action Clinic, and Megan Harper, a doctoral student and case manager at the ACT Clinic. We also have myself and Dr. Regina Carroll here today to contribute to questions and discussion as well at the end and throughout. Our agenda of this presentation is listed on this slide. We'll discuss social skills, including what they are, when and how to teach them, skills for different ages, creating opportunities, going through a case example, and then we'll have time for feedback and discussion with everybody here today. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Allie, who is our first presenter today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we're going to get started talking about social skills. So, social skills are skills we use to interact and communicate effectively with other individuals. There are many different types of social skills and subtypes, including verbal and written communication, nonverbal communication, conversation skills, sharing and turn-taking skills, active listening, and empathy, just to name a few. In order to have strong social skills, individuals need to know how to interact with others in social situations and understand both written and implied rules when communicating with others. Okay, so next we're going to get into understanding impairments in social interactions and ASD diagnosis. So one of the core symptoms of an autism spectrum disorder diagnosis is impairments in social interaction and communication skills. Impairments can look like a lot of different things. They can vary widely in terms of severity and impact, but may include deficits in nonverbal behaviors, such as not understanding facial expressions, social cues, or body language, trouble with peer relationships, not spontaneously seeking to share or interact with others, not engaging in that social emotional reciprocity, deficits in spoken language or conversation skills, not engaging in make-believe play or social imitative play, or engaging in stereotypical or repetitive use of language. So it's so important to work on social skills so individuals can maintain social interactions with others. Research shows, a study by Brownlow and colleagues indicates that most individuals with autism want to form relationships and do not prefer social isolation. So what this is telling us is even if an individual on the spectrum may be displaying some deficits in social skills, that does not mean that they are not motivated or they are not seeking out those social interactions with other people. So if there are some social interaction deficits, relationships can still be formed. Working on social skills can lead to a lot of great benefits. Understanding or being able to cope with big emotions like anger or sadness in a way that is socially appropriate. Recognizing and empathizing with other people's emotions, considering other people's point of view, finding productive ways to resolve conflict, forming and maintaining relationships and friendships, and forgiving others and expressing remorse. Okay, so when is an individual ready to learn social skills? So in typical development, socializing starts very early. That could look like a baby making eye contact with their mother, a toddler pointing out an interesting sight to a caregiver, or a child being able to point or gesture towards something that they want. So many social skills can be worked on very early in one's life, and we can target some of those. So early social skills might include eye contact, joint attention, back and forth vocalization, pointing and gestures, imitating play, and sharing. So in summary, it's never too early to start working on social skills. A lot of times when we are interacting with little ones, we might engage in some of these behaviors that can work on social skills, and you might not even realize it. So some things we can do to target social skills in early life are, singing, making different facial expressions, vocal play, and making different sounds and at different volumes, looking in the mirror with a little one and making different faces in mirror play, and narrating the actions of what the little one is doing. Okay, and then so talking about a little bit older individuals, when is an individual ready to learn social skills in a group setting? So when we're thinking about working on social skills in a group setting, there are some considerations that we need to think of to ensure that that is the best environment for that learner and that we're setting them up for success. So some things to keep in mind before working on social skills in a group setting. Does that individual allow other people in their space? Are they able to tolerate others touching their items or sitting closely to them? Is that individual able to engage in independent leisure activities? Can they engage in activities independently to entertain themselves? Can that person attend in a group setting? So can they listen to instructions with the distraction of other people being in that group as well? And finally, do they display aggression towards others? So in a social group setting, we have to set it up so it's safe for everybody. So if some of the answers are no to some of these questions, that individual might not be ready for learning social skills in a group setting, but there are things that we can do, such as targeting some of those skills prior to beginning a social skills group and working on some of those things. So on this slide, you'll see there's a QR code. That is a code that will lead you to a resource that just talks about some different tips and tricks for working through some of these prerequisite skills. Right, so I'm going to turn it over to Sam next.
All right, so now that we have discussed the different types of social skills and when an individual may be ready to learn them, we can discuss the different types of prompts and the guidance that we can use when teaching these skills, as well as when and how to fade the prompts. So first things first, when should we use prompts? Prompts come in many forms, and they're excellent to use when teaching a new skill or refining a familiar skill. With that being said, we may also prompt an individual to engage in a correct response when they respond or they begin to respond incorrectly. So, for example, if the learner is working on not walking away when people are talking to them, you could provide a prompt to face the speaker as soon as they turn their back on the speaker. You don't necessarily have to wait until they're already walking away to deliver the prompt. And finally, we can also deliver a prompt if the learner does not respond or they seem unsure of how to respond in a situation. So as referenced earlier, prompts come in many different forms. I have listed out 6 on this slide, and I'm going to go through each of them and just give a few examples. So the first one we're going to talk about is a verbal prompt. A verbal prompt would just be any verbal reminder, feedback, or redirection. So for example, if we're teaching greetings to a child, a verbal prompt could be saying, "Don't forget to say hi to our friend." For visual prompts, that will be any picture or any text that the learner can see or read as a form of a prompt. So this could be a written script if they're trying to learn greetings or conversation skills. The next one is a gesture prompt, and a gesture prompt is essentially any gesture towards the correct response. If we're teaching a child to go through the green door and they don't respond, we can point towards the green door to prompt that response. For a model prompt, we can show the individual the desired behavior, and this can be either through a video model or an in-person model. And then we have two types of physical prompts. So partial physical prompting is when you prompt the individual using light physical touch. So that would be like gently guiding the child's elbow to initiate shaking hands, while a full physical prompt would be prompting the individual fully through the action by taking their hand and then fully prompting them to shake hands with another individual. So the type of prompt that we use, it really just depends on the learner's skill level, what types of prompts they respond to best, and the specific skill that's being taught. So as you can imagine, a verbal prompt would not be very helpful for an individual who struggles to respond to directions and understand and follow instructions. However, if you're teaching a child conversation skills, a physical prompt would not be as practical as a verbal or a model prompt would be. So it really just depends on the child, like I said, and then the type of skill that we're teaching. So least to most prompting is a type of prompting that uses the least intrusive prompts first, and then it moves to more intrusive prompts if the least intrusive prompts are not effective. So the graphic above just shows an example of what that can look like, moving from verbal, which is a least intrusive prompt method, and moving towards the full physical, which is the most intrusive prompt method. And so you can also modify this to suit your needs. So some of these prompts may not be used at all, such as visual or full physical, just depending on the skill and the child or the individual. So least to most prompting is really great for more advanced learners who don't need as much prompting to acquire new skills. Using this method also helps to avoid prompt dependency. Prompt dependency can occur when an individual is used to a certain level of prompting. And so when a less intrusive prompt is used, like a verbal or a visual prompt, the learner may struggle to complete the task and then wait for your assistance, even though they're capable of completing the skill by themselves. On the other end of the spectrum, most to least prompting uses the most intrusive prompts first, and then gradually uses less intrusive prompting as the skill is acquired. This learning style is best used when a brand new skill is being taught and you want to avoid reinforcing incorrect responses. Different time delays can also be used and modified depending on the needs of the learner. A time delay is essentially just how much time should pass between an instruction and a prompt. So if you want to use a 0-second prompt delay, which we typically use at the very beginning of a teaching sequence, you should begin prompting the learner using whatever chosen prompt immediately after given the instruction. So for example, if you're teaching greetings using a 0-second visual prompt, you would want to provide the visual prompt immediately after giving the instruction. On the other hand, when you use a 5-second prompt delay, you should give the learner the instruction, wait 5 seconds, and then use the predetermined prompt. So using the same example as before, let's say we're working on greetings, we give the instruction, and then we wait 5 seconds. Let's say the learner doesn't respond. We would then provide a visual prompt. And then moving along using least to most prompting, if the learner does not respond or does not respond correctly, we could then use a model and model the greeting for the learner. And then, of course, just like everything else we're talking about, we want to modify the time delays and the prompting levels to suit the learner's needs. So as I mentioned before, fading prompts is really important so that the learner does not become prompt dependent. Graduated guidance is a great way to gradually fade prompts while still being available to provide prompting if needed. Graduated guidance is the gradual reduction of prompts to help an individual gain independence for everyday skills and tasks. Using graduated guidance, we allow the individual to complete the task and demonstrate the skill on their own. And then as the individual shows that they need less prompting, we can fade proximity to the learner and provide the least intrusive prompts. So that will be like a gesture, a verbal, or a model. And we'll only provide those if necessary. And if the individual is stuck on a particular step and they're not responding to the least intrusive prompt, we can move to more physical prompts to help assist them in the skill. All right, so now I'm gonna play a short video. It'll show a pretty good example of what the different types of prompting look like and using prompt fading procedures. Okay, so the video is actually not playing. So we're gonna come back to it if we have extra time at the end. But it was just a video kind of modeling the different types of prompts and then how to fade them using most to least prompting. So now I'm gonna hand it back off to Allie.
Okay, so next we are going to discuss behavioral skills training, or BST, and how we can use behavioral skills training to teach social skills. All right, so behavioral skills training is a treatment package consisting of multiple treatment components that has been proven to be effective at teaching a wide variety of different skills. BST consists of 4 main components that include instructions, modeling, rehearsal, and feedback. Using BST can be a very effective way to help an individual learn social skills. So the first component of BST is instructions. When providing instructions, first we want to describe the skill we're working on. And we want to make sure that we're describing in very clear and concise terms, but also including enough detail. For more advanced learners, that might mean including a rationale for why that skill is important. Giving an explanation for why we're targeting this skill can help increase motivation for working on that skill. One tip is to try to stick to one skill at a time. It's important that we can master one skill and not overwhelm a learner. And then once they have that skill mastered, we can build upon that and try to teach other skills. We can use handouts or aids whenever possible. Below are some examples of aids we might use with instructions. They describe a social setting or a social situation and then go into some detail about responses that would be socially appropriate and would contact an interaction or an interaction that might not be the most appropriate. So for example, over here on the left, this is a picture, a visual that says, I have something to say, and we have green arrows indicating that that would be the path to choose. So if I have something to say, I can tap the teacher's arm and I can say, excuse me. And then that would lead to my teacher listening, and I can use my words to explain what I want. On the other hand, we have this other arrow, this red arrow, indicating this would not be an ideal situation of grabbing the person to get their attention. And then the consequences, my teacher does not like when I grab them, and that would not be the way to set up a conversation and indicate that you need something. So using visuals or aids like these can help a learner grasp the concept of the instruction and what each step should mean. Next, here's some examples of making lists of steps. So if a learner does better by reading or having a list to reference, making a list or a visual aid to list the instructions can be very beneficial. So we'll go through a few of those. So some steps for getting someone's attention, looking at someone and you see that they're busy. The next step would be saying, excuse me. Then you wait for the person to respond and say yes and indicate that they heard you say excuse me, and then you say what you need from them. Here's a couple more, another list of steps for sharing and offering toys. Just very simple, using clear and concise terms, but describing exactly what should be happening. And then one more example of example lists of steps to be taken by the skill of saying thank you to another person. So listing exactly what should be done. Okay, so the next component of behavioral skills training is modeling. Modeling is showing the learner exactly how to engage in that skill. We want to model that behavior and show them exactly what it looks like, what it sounds like, and what they should be doing. You can model with another person to show the learner what that behavior is, and they can watch you perform that behavior, and then they can try it on their own. We should model each step exactly as it should be performed. And sometimes using the individual's peers can be helpful during the modeling process and can increase motivation to learn. Visual supports and video models also may be supplemental resources as well. So using video modeling is an effective way to teach for some learners, and there's some resources listed below. So this Everyday Speech website has freebies every week. YouTube can be a good resource for video models, or you can make the videos yourself. All right, to get into a little bit more about video modeling. If video modeling is an effective way to teach an individual you're working with, there's some steps that, some suggestions that you can take when using a video model. So the first step is you want to make sure you make a list or a task analysis of all of the steps needed to complete that skill appropriately. So if our skill was greeting a friend, we are going to list all of the steps that it would take to go and greet a friend. And then what we would want to do is have somebody else review that list if possible. It's important to ensure that somebody's checking to make sure, because they might say, hey, you missed a step. This is what I do when I go greet somebody, and you don't have that listed. When making video models, there are lots of different types that we can create. There's our basic video model, which is watching somebody else perform the skill. It's a video of somebody engaging in that target skill. There's also the point of view video model, where it's a video model through like the lens of the learner's eyes. So for example, if we were working on hand washing and we were doing a point of view video model, we might make the point of view, exactly what that learner would see when they're standing at the sink and going to wash their hands. There is self-modeling, where the student completes the skill themselves for the video. And if prompting is needed to complete that video, you just kind of cut those prompts out and splice that video together, so it's one cohesive action of the learner. And then we also have video prompting. So what that is each step of that target skill is videotaped separately, and then we can play those videos as prompts to help that learner if they get stuck on a certain step in that whole skill set. So when using video models, you could also, you can create your own, or you can find video models. So like I said, YouTube is a good source where you can find some video models, but it also is not too terribly challenging to create video models and then voice over to add some additional instruction that can be helpful to support that learner as they're watching the video. Okay, the third component of behavioral skills training is rehearsal. Rehearsal is when the trainee role plays the skill themselves. So we've given the instruction, we've modeled how to engage in that behavior, and then we want them to practice or role play or rehearse that behavior. It's important during rehearsal that, we are trying to rehearse in a way as if we were actually engaging in that behavior, and that we're practicing all of the components of that skill. When we are role playing, that can be a contrived situation, or that can be in the natural environment. So a contrived situation would be the trainer, creating or contriving a situation and setting it up for a scenario to practice that social skill. Natural environment rehearsal would be waiting for a natural opportunity to use that skill and then practicing it when it is appropriate. And the last component of BST is feedback. So after the trainer has observed the rehearsal of the skill, feedback is so important to give. So we can indicate to that learner what they're doing awesome and what they might need to improve on. So we want to provide praise. It's important that we provide descriptive praise to the learner, letting them know exactly what they're doing and why it was so great. And then when we're providing constructive feedback, we also want to be descriptive and letting them know, what things that they could change or improve to make it better for the next time. There are some suggested ways when you're delivering feedback to make that constructive feedback less aversive. So some suggested ways include giving a feedback sandwich where we deliver positive feedback, then constructive feedback in the middle, and then another positive feedback statement to kind of sandwich that constructive feedback. Or what we could do is we could provide a lot of positive feedback prior and kind of pair that positive feedback before giving constructive feedback. Okay. So in a more structured setting, you may also consider using a rubric or rating scale for feedback. By using a rubric rating scale, you can take data during the rehearsal phase and then give specific data about each component of this skill that you were taking data on. You can also potentially have the trainees rate themselves and describe how they displayed the skill during a practice opportunity, or self-monitor their own behavior. So there are a few resources on this slide for data collection and self-monitoring. So this first one is a self-monitoring app. It's a free app through Kansas University. And then below it, we have listed the Score It app, which is also another app for monitoring behavior. And then below that, there are two visuals of different rating scales. One is a little bit more general rating scale, a scale of 0 to 4 of I can't do this skill on my own, or I'm so good at this skill, I can teach others how to do it. So rating their level of, proficientness with that skill. And then there's also a different rating scale that's listed on this slide that's a little bit more specific. So this was if the target skill was conversation. So they have some specific components of what goes into a conversation. Did I ask open-ended questions? Did I answer my own questions? Did I check my humor? Did I listen? And then rating how they did on each of those different skills within that conversation area and monitoring themselves that way. Okay, next we have a video, but we'll probably come back to this towards the end if we can get it to play. We gotta figure out how to do that. All right. Okay. But the video was it was going through all of the components of behavioral skills training. So giving a video model of instructions, modeling, rehearsal, and feedback, and what that might look like. When using BST, it is an excellent way to teach new skills, but generalization of those skills is super important to ensure that that skill is in that individual's repertoire, and it's something that they can engage in their everyday life. Some things that we can do to make sure that those skills have generalized is ensuring that we provide opportunities to work on the target skill that we've been working on throughout the day. So providing multiple opportunities in different environments, in the home, outside, during meal times, at the store, just creating situations to practice some of those target skills. When we do see that those skills that you've been practicing have occurred, making sure we praise and reinforce those skills. We want to let that learner know, like, that was so awesome. We saw you engage in that great social skill. This is why it was so great. We want to be able to empower the learner to use that skill again. And so when we praise and reinforce that behavior, we empower them to continue to use that skill. And then if we do see that the skills are not occurring when they should, if there's natural opportunities for those social skills to be used and that individual is not engaging in them, that's an indication that we need to provide some prompts potentially and provide some more support to that individual, or that we need to do more training sessions at a different time to continue to practice that skill. Okay, next we are going to talk about preschool life skills and social skills for early learners. All right, so preschool life skills is a response to intervention-based curriculum for preventing problem behavior. It is an active teaching model where there's exposure to events that help promote target behaviors and provide practice opportunities. So in this model, individuals learn appropriate skills and how to respond to evocative events. There are 4 teaching units that are included in preschool life skills, and they include following instructions, functional communication, tolerance, and friendship. That's a little pyramid that shows that. Using preschool life skills, we can teach these skills to individuals of all ages. So by looking at an individual and what skill sets they are needing to work on, we can individualize this plan. It can be taught in home or in a classroom setting. And on this slide, you'll see a QR code for more information about preschool life skills. If anyone is interested, we can leave that up for a second. So preschool life skills help prevent challenging behavior while teaching cooperation, functional communication, and toleration of delays. Within the curriculum, as I mentioned before, there are four main areas. So under the area of following instructions, the target behaviors are responding to name and then following simple and multiple step instructions. Under functional communication, targeting requesting for help, requesting for attention, and then requesting from both adults and peers. For tolerance skills, tolerating delays. And then for friendship skills, saying thank you, complimenting and acknowledging, offering and sharing, and comforting others. These particular social skills were selected for preschool life skills curriculum based on functional analysis and treatment literature and school readiness literature. So these skills were selected partially because they were skills identified by teachers as being critical to early school success, and partially because in our literature, a lot of these skills are taught in treatment once problem behavior has developed. So preschool life skills is class-wide teaching while interacting with typical routine activities. So the teaching model that preschool life skills uses is behavioral skills training, that BST that we talked about earlier. It consists of the initial teaching portion, which includes the instruction, the rationale for why you're working on those skills, and the model. And then everyone role plays together. Following that, there are baseline probes where there are different evocative events arranged, and then seeing if that individual engages in the target behaviors and then providing descriptive praise. There are also booster sessions or booster teaching sessions that can be added if needed. Preschool life skills, although it is so awesome, it is not an all-inclusive program or curriculum. There are some social skills that are super important that are not targeted in that curriculum. So some other social skills that should develop in early or late childhood include some of these things, such as apologizing, appropriate voice volume, being a good sport, sharing thoughts and ideas, accepting criticism, accepting and responding to no appropriately, staying near peers and adults, recognizing body language and nonverbal communication, understanding sarcasm, personal space, and sticking up for themselves. Okay, next we're going to get into some social skills for advanced learners, adolescents, and adults. All right, so there are many various social skills that are important to work on with adolescents and adults that might not be appropriate to target with an earlier learner or a younger individual, but that are super important later on in life. So this is a list. The list is 50 plus social skills for teens that gives a lot of different ideas of various social skills that should be targeted through adolescence, teen years, and adulthoods for individuals. So some of them are a little bit more complicated, but if we work on social skills early, we can kind of build upon those earlier social skills to work on some of these more advanced skills. Okay, and then we have 4 resources that we have recommended for this age group to work on social skills. So I'll just give you a brief explanation of some of these. So the social skills training and preparing for life books are books by Dr. Jed Baker. They include multiple evidence-based strategies for social skills for older individuals. Jed Baker is the director of the Social Skills Training Project. It's an organization serving individuals with autism and social communication problems. He's also published a variety of other books related to social skills for individuals of various ages. The Social Skills Lessons and Activities book is a ready-to-use curriculum based on real-life situations to help potentially build self-esteem, self-control, respect for the rights of others, and a sense of responsibility for one's own actions. Some important skills that are included in this curriculum are responding to failure, dealing with an accusation, keeping your composure, and solving conflicts. And then additionally, one more resource that we recommend is the Peers for Young Adults. It's an evidence-based curriculum for social skills for adults who are interested in making and keeping friends. It touches on developing romantic relationships, includes didactic lessons, role play, demonstrations, and lots of different practice opportunities. So when teaching or working on social skills with older individuals, many of the same strategies that we talked about earlier are applicable. Some of these things include functional communication training, modeling, prompting, reinforcement, BST, self-management, video modeling, and visual supports. Same thing, we want to ensure we're providing lots of practice opportunities and consider the use of naturalistic reinforcers when working on social skills with adults and adolescents. So we're going to talk a little bit more about self-management and visual support since we haven't touched on that quite yet. So by learning self-management techniques, an individual can become more independent, more self-reliant, and more responsible for their own behavior. It gives that individual an opportunity to participate in the design and implementation of their own behavior management programs. And it helps them acquire a skill that may help with generalization, support autonomy, and has the potential to produce long-lasting behavioral improvements. So some steps for implementing a self-management system include preparing the system, ideally together with that individual who the system is for. Working with that individual to use the system. So creating some sort of self-monitoring program and then working with that individual to learn and to implement that system. Then implementing the system and promoting independence for the individual. We want to make sure that this is something we're setting people up, so they can do this on their own and be independent when self-monitoring. We recommend practicing self-monitoring initially when the stakes are very low. And then implementing it, later on in the more natural environment, once there's some practice and that individual has had some opportunities to practice that skill when the stakes are low before moving into the natural environment. So here are some examples of some different self-management systems and how they can be designed. So you'll see over here on the left, did I stay and play with my friends? This is a simple self-monitoring system where that individual can look during these different increments and circle, did I stay and play with my friends? Yes or no. And then their reward system is if they got 3 smileys, if they did stay and play with their friends throughout 3 of those intervals, yes, they get a reward. Nope, they'll try again tomorrow. On the right, there's my own self-monitoring checklist. So this is one that an individual is able to create their own checklist of things that they want to work on and monitor. So they're able to individualize this to skills that they would like to monitor about themselves and see how they were doing there. And then some of these strategies may also be supplemented by technology, such as like a vibrating watch or a smart watch to indicate that it's time to check in and to monitor themselves and to fill out one of these systems or to engage with one of their self-monitoring programs. And then here, similarly, a behavioral contract can be designed between a learner and an adult. So a teacher, a parent, a caregiver, a babysitter. A self-monitoring contract, the focus of this is increasing positive behaviors by providing a visual reference with rules and then outlining, reinforcement and desired behaviors. So it's a contract that lists expectations, rules, and consequences for either following or not following those expectations. The most efficacious contracts include like a negotiated agreement where all parties get included in the creation of the contract and get input on what goes in. We need to make sure we have a description of what the learner should do. What are the desired behaviors? Instead of just listing all of the things that the learner shouldn't do, we want to make sure we list what they should do and provide descriptions of that. We want to provide a goal or an objective statement. Why are we working on this? What is our end goal? And then we want to outline what the reinforcer is, what the consequence is, what that learner will earn for meeting that goal. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back over to Sam now.
Okay, so now that we are familiar with when social skills should develop and then the different ways to teach the social skills, we can talk about creating opportunities for social interaction in the natural environment. So as we discussed previously, there are many ways to model and teach social skills before we practice them in the natural environment. So we want to create social opportunities that match our specific goals and that we can easily transfer and practice naturally in the environment. So this can include anything from turn taking to asking others for help. And remember that every individual with autism is different. So while one may struggle with more basic social skills such as eye contact and greetings, another may struggle with resisting peer pressure and accepting constructive criticism. And this is why it is so important to tailor these specific opportunities for practicing these skills with the learner in mind. So when creating these opportunities, we want to begin by practicing in a comfortable environment. And this can be at home, at school, or wherever the social situation would occur naturally. Familiar individuals and highly preferred individuals, such as family, friends, and peers, are always encouraged and involved. That kind of makes it a little bit more fun and a little bit more reinforcing for the individual that's learning the social skills as well. All individuals who are participating should be aware of what the learner's goal is and if there's a particular way that they should respond in the event that the learner does not respond or does not respond in an appropriate manner. And while these are contrived opportunities, we do still want to try to keep it as natural as possible. And it really helps to practice these skills under the context that they would normally occur. So for example, let's say that your family has a weekly game night / family night. This would be a great opportunity to practice some of these skills and to contrive a few situations that would be naturally occurring in the environment anyway. This can include turn taking, sharing, asking for help. And then it's always important to remember that you can practice and model multiple social skills in one time frame. So using the game night as an example, many social interactions occur during a game night or a family night. So there are many opportunities to model or prompt appropriate interactions in the natural environment, as well as in the contrived situation throughout the evening. After the learner is comfortable engaging in these skills in the home environment and more comfortable environments, we can generalize it to other environments that they may not be as comfortable with, such as the school, a park, a grocery store. And then always remember to provide feedback and prompts as needed, because they're still learning and it's okay to make mistakes. And so as I referenced a little bit earlier, there are plenty of opportunities for teachable moments in the natural environment, and we should be utilizing these moments. So for example, this would be like sharing with siblings, greeting new people. We don't want to straight up ignore these moments just because we don't think that the learner has the skills to successfully engage in them independently. When social interactions occur that are new to the learner, we can observe how they react and provide feedback, prompts, and guidance as necessary. Every social interaction can be a teachable moment, so we should be constantly providing those models and that feedback for them to watch and respond to. And we really want to utilize these moments because they can have a positive impact on the individual. Modeling appropriate social interactions is really important too, especially, like I said earlier, if the individual is not yet ready to participate in these skills themselves. So for example, if you have a toddler who is not yet at the stage where they're ready to initiate social interactions or carry on a conversation, it's always good to just be a model for them in these social interactions so that they can become familiar with them. And so while we want to provide lots of opportunities to practice these social interactions, it's also important that the individual finds these interactions enjoyable and not aversive. So next, we're going to talk about how to reinforce social interactions and how to pair social interactions as reinforcing if they're not already preferred by the learner. So first, let's talk about finding appropriate reinforcers for the individual. Positive social attention is a natural reinforcer for engaging in social interactions. However, because we're all unique, what one person finds reinforcing may not be reinforcing for everyone. Because of this, it may take more effort to find suitable reinforcers for different people. Something is only reinforcing if it increases the occurrence of the target behavior in the future. So for example, if a learner does not like to be physically touched and he is hugged after a social interaction, he may be less likely to initiate an interaction with that person again, or maybe even initiate an interaction with people that were nearby him again. There are ways to find appropriate reinforcers, many ways to find appropriate reinforcers. So if the individual is able to communicate their preferences, you can ask them what kind of praise or reinforcement that they prefer. If they're not able to communicate their preferences, you can also ask their parents, peers, or just observe them. You can also conduct a quick preference assessment between different items, different activities, and different forms of praise. You can use just one of these methods, or you can use several of these methods to get different perspectives or reinforcers. We always want to reinforce any positive social interactions that occur, especially ones that occur less often or are known to be more difficult. So this includes reinforcing prompted social interactions and any approximations towards independent social interactions. There are many ways to reinforce social interactions. There's verbal praise. This would be saying something like, "Way to go, good job, I like how you shared your toy with me." There's physical touch, and this would be pats on the back, hugs, tickles, high fives. And then there's tangible objects, and this would be any highly preferred toys or highly preferred food items. And so any combination of these can and should be used. So you shouldn't just stick to verbal if the kid is also a child or an individual who in boys' physical touch, it's okay to use both verbal and physical touch. And remember to keep in mind the learner's reinforcement preferences and interests when reinforcing social interactions. Reinforcement should be unique to the child and should be unique to your relationship with the child. So things like praise and even physical touch as reinforcement can look very different depending on your relationship with the learner, and that's okay. And then don't forget to show your excitement for the learner when they accomplish a goal. Reinforcing social interactions does not have to be complicated. So if you found that the individual that you're working with really enjoys praise and physical attention, and that's what you've been doing and it's reinforcing for them, you may not need to find any extra reinforcers because it's always best to use natural reinforcers when possible. So our goal in general is just to make social interactions fun, not just something that the individual has to do. So if social interactions are aversive, we can try pairing them with highly preferred items or highly preferred people. We can do this by creating social opportunities with highly preferred people. We can incorporate highly preferred toys, highly preferred activities within the social interaction. And we can also create social opportunities that center around a special area of interest for the individual. We also want to gradually increase the demands during social interactions. So we want the individual to see social interactions as fun before they're negatively associated with demands or excessive prompts and feedback. So a good example would be if we're working with a younger child who really doesn't enjoy playing around others, we may just start by really heavily reinforcing parallel play. So that would just be two individuals playing next to each other. They may not even be playing with the same thing or making any sort of contact with each other. They're just playing next to each other. And then we would gradually move towards sharing and turn taking, maybe greetings, stuff like that once that they're both comfortable sharing a space and being in the same environment together. Just a reminder that we really don't want to expect too much all at once. It can be really exciting when individuals start to have fun with social interactions and start to find them enjoyable. But it can quickly become overwhelming for the individual, especially if it's something new. Every individual moves at their own pace, and some learners just might need more time experiencing how social interactions can be fun before they're met with a bunch of demands or prompts or feedback. All right, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Megan, who is going to do a case example.
Hi, everyone. I'm another supervisor at the ACT clinic. So I thought we could review a case example just to get some practice on how you might address the situation. So our example is Rebecca, who's a 12-year-old autistic girl, and she really loves playing video games and specifically playing multiplayer games, but she doesn't know exactly how to socialize while she plays the game, which, you know, could cause someone not to want to play with them if they don't get kind of that positive feedback while they're playing. So that's why it might be important to Rebecca to learn this skill. So if you don't mind using the chat to help to participate in this practice here, can you give me some ideas of some skills we might teach Rebecca in this context? Either you could, maybe some of the friendship skills we talked about or sportsman-like skills. Give you a couple seconds for people to add to the chat. Well, I know some that I was thinking of were whether it's relevant to some, even those preschool life skills we talked about aren't just preschool life skills, like we said. Thank you, Mary. I see that there's listening to others as they play and then probably responding to them as they go. Other sportsman-like skills are just saying like good game at the end sometimes too. one that maybe just for the initiating conversations and starting, thanks, Allie. So let's use like complimenting the other player as an example. Yeah, thanks everyone for starting to join. So if we're complimenting the other player as they're going, like if they, you know, if they're team building or something like that, how might we, maybe practice describing how you would use BST or that behavior skills training to use this skill. First we might have to start with what are the steps to doing this skill. So to compliment someone, what do you have to notice first? And you can add a couple little comments. Yeah, if they're paying attention. If they're just as into the game as you are, that's another thing. I think too, you might have to recognize when they did something good. And you probably do, but we just don't always recognize when to make a comment about it. So recognizing like, oh, that's when they should do it, and maybe knowing why, like, yeah, I think explaining rationale is a good idea too, as to why they should be giving compliments. So that could be, you know, telling them, you know, your friends like to play with you more when they know they're doing the right thing. Yeah, that's a good point, Teresa. And then how might we model giving a compliment to someone while they're playing the game? What are some scenarios that we might set up? What has to happen first? I know Allie talked about a couple ways we could model the scenario. And for video games, there's a few different ways, right? We could, yeah, knowing the game. So like it might be good to start with a game that they like to play. Or even one that's a little easier too, one that they're not too into. Yeah, you could just do it while they're playing the game. Or maybe even doing one that's like one step less preferred than their favorite one, because maybe they'll be so into their game, it'll be hard to do teaching during that time, but definitely just a lot of natural teaching could happen. If it is hard to get to their attention, maybe you could try one of those video models. Yep. Yeah, you could sit by the person and ask them questions to kind of probe. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, maybe a board game that might be like easier too. Sorry, I'm paying attention to the comments. I hope you guys are too. So that's what I'm commenting on. Great. And then so we talked about, yes, we know how to successfully play the game and successfully, or know when the other person is acting successfully in the game too. Yeah, that's a good point. And so for prompting, I don't have, you know, a full explanation here for the way that Rebecca learns, but what are some different prompts we could use to get Rebecca to comment on her friend's game playing? Yep, we could just throw in there, like, we could even just say good game, and then they might echo it back. Oh yeah, good game. Some things, if they just need a quick reminder, you might have like a little card that just says like comment or something like that. Yeah, visual prompts and hold it up. Yeah, a good list of prompts. That's a good idea. I realize we're running out of time, so a high five is a good one. It's initiating and a prompt. Yeah, that's a great one. Let's see. And then I was thinking for some feedback statements, you know, making sure to mix in correct and incorrect. Like, yeah, that was really great. You know, like when, I don't know, a battle's over, there's a pausing moment when you can kind of go over what just happened and what they did correctly and incorrectly. And then not forgetting to reinforce and building that into just like regular play. So maybe you play with them longer if they give you more compliments, but if they don't give as many compliments, it's like, oh, I'm going to take a break for a minute and then come back. So great job, everybody. Next, I'll quickly go over how you can access our resources that we talked about. So these are going to be bigger when you scan the QR code, but these are just little screen grabs of some resources that we pulled together for you. You'll be able to find some resources for the greater Omaha area with the for social skills and social opportunities, including recreational opportunities and social clubs. And these flyers will be translated into English as well as Spanish. And then in the folder, you can also find a copy of this presentation in English available. So Mary put the link in the chat, but you can also scan the QR code to find it.